Hello, my name is Cameron Miller, and this is Trinity Place. A little different setting this week. This is my office, so welcome to my office. It's still a reflection on the lectionary readings this week, the second Sunday of Easter. And if you're not watching this on the worship video, the reading from which this is focused and taken is John's Gospel, John 20:19 through 31. So you can look that up and read it, or you can listen to the full worship video and hear it yourself. But here's what I know about this gospel story. John is terrified of doubt. And here's what I know about us. We live in an era of doubt. No, not really an era, a miasma of doubt, a body bag of doubt we're living in. So let's start with us. We're living through an extraordinary tunnel of doubt from which we cannot yet see the light at the end. It's a bit strange for us too, because we've just come through such a prolonged sense of abundance and prosperity without a fearful external enemy and very low interest rates to boot. But since at least 2016, we just haven't known what to expect and when it will end. The it being whatever existential threats seem most threatening to us. Of course, on one level, that is a real white, cis male liberal point of view, since there are a whole lot of people who have been living on the margins for a whole lot of time. But there is also an envelope that we have entered together in 2016, and it got even grayer and foggier with COVID-19. And now we even have a war in Europe again. Our institutions seem to be crumbling under the weight of all of it. School, classrooms, and administrations are imploding. Banking, courts, governments, law enforcement, publishing, healthcare, religion. It's hard to think of an institution that is not fraying at the edges or crumbling from the foundation. We don't know how it will end, or where our place in it is, or what, if anything, we can do about it. That's why I call it an era of doubt, existential doubt about what is enduring and what is passing away in the night. I'll give you a graphic example from my own current experience. Now, I am a part-time rector here in this congregation, and I have been with them as we traverse this transition from a huge neo-Gothic historic building and campus of buildings to a storefront church located in a former wine bar. It's a great and wonderful story, a liberation and a renewal, but too long a story for this sermon. But the part that I'm thinking of just now, it has to do with the congregation's columbarium. You see, the congregation had built a kind of wall in its chapel as a place for people to inter the ashes of their loved ones. Well, I spent much of last summer and early fall contacting family members from all parts of the country to let them know that we were closing the columbarium. Now, whoever would expect that a 200-year-old church and its columbarium would close? That's just not a thought most of us would have had before the last few years. Big old churches were forever. At least that's the way we treated them and thought of them. But as we know now, those big old buildings are closing all over the country. Now that example is amplified and echoed with other stories from schools and offices and hospitals and businesses. And that's what I mean about an era of doubt. We just don't know. And when we don't know, it's hard to put our trust in anything or anyone that says they do. So now back to the gospel for a moment. John's Jesus is not just a Messiah. John's Jesus was in the beginning, was the Word, and the Word was with God in the beginning of it all, before the Big Bang. John's Jesus was cosmic as well as infleshed. John's Jesus was a really, really big deal. And I would say an even bigger deal than Mark, Luke, and Matthew's Jesus. After all, Mark's gospel sort of begins with a full-grown Jesus who almost seems to kind of stumble into a radical new relationship with God. And then it ends with an empty tomb and no ghost stories. John has an awful lot riding on Jesus, and he is terrified of doubt. He makes a point of saying that everything John, says is absolutely true. And he knows because he witnessed it. Which, by the way, inspires doubt in all kinds of New Testament scholars. So John narrates this really weird but cool encounter between Jesus and Thomas, and he narrates it in such a way as to alienate an awful lot of 21st century folks. You might even be one of them. I mean, he basically says, those of us who cannot put our fingers in the spear holes in Jesus' waist or the nail holes in his hand have to believe what John tells us, or we're spiritual chopped liver. Now that ain't right. John sets up a terrible dichotomy between those who believe what the editors of those long ago stories want us to believe and those of us who instead believe our own experience. Most of us, I'm guessing, have not had the kind of experience John is describing. So he's afraid that if we doubt the stories, we will doubt his Christology and the whole thing will unravel. Well, he isn't wrong. At least not from my experience. Once we start demythologizing and deconstructing the biblical narrative the way that we have and are doing with our own national history around slavery, then we are left to then remythologize and reconstruct a new narrative that is more consistent with our own lived experience. Which is what religion really ought to be doing. Which is what Christianity and the Episcopal Church and any church really ought to be doing today. Remythologizing and reconstructing a new narrative that is consistent with our lived experience. Those who are deeply invested in our believing them and believing the way that they want us to see Jesus, or slavery for that matter, are fearful of that process. But I say faith has almost nothing to do with theology, certainly not an institutional theology. You see, what we often think of as faith is actually belief. Beliefs are the things we believe in or not. But faith is an experience. And I'm going to try to describe to you the experience of faith, but it's like trying to describe being in love. I'll not be able to do it or meet the challenge, but I'm a preacher, so I'm going to try anyway. Think of an athlete or a dancer or a musician. Those who enter into the grace of the thing that she or he does best. For me, it's somebody like NBA star Steph Curry when he can't miss a three-point shot no matter where he is on the court or how off balance he is. He gets into that zone, and what happens is just amazing and appears to be totally natural. Well, faith is likewise a kind of zone that we enter into in which everything just clicks and fits, and the love and the relationships and the work and the commitments of our lives all feel like they're floating together in a single current. It's not a sensation that lasts for very long, but when we feel it, it inspires deep gratitude and sense of wellness, really. And I don't mean to say that when we're in that zone or in that moment, we suddenly are without pain or challenge, or that somehow all our difficulties are removed. Not at all. It's just that we know, even if for only a moment, that we're part of something much bigger and more magnificent, and as small and as insignificant, as imperfect as our own little life is. We're part of this bigger flow, and wow, all is well. Do you know that experience? It may be evoked by awe, like in the natural world, or by music, or in love. But whatever instigates or inspires it, we suddenly feel the current within which our life flows, and for just a second, we know the ordinary presence of the sacred. That's the experience. Trusting it when it has passed, and holding on to it when we don't feel it anymore. That is faith. So you see, faith is not about intellectual beliefs or doctrinal formulas. That's religion. The institutions of religion seek to get the rest of us to go along with their prescribed set of beliefs and ideas about God. That's what religion does. But faith is a flesh and blood, real-time encounter with the holy. Whether it's a wee small voice whispering to us in the dark of the night, or a blistering dream that shatters our previous plans, or the warm depth of God and community making itself known in the bread and the wine. It's an experience that we hold on to and trust even as it passes. Holding on to and trusting even as it passes is faith. What I would say about faith is that it's an actual encounter with the presence of God in our midst. An experience we engage or not, rather than an idea or doctrine we believe or not. And if I had to boil down this Christianity thing we do to some manageable, digestible bite, it would be that resurrection is a thing we practice or not. The basic concept of Christianity is that resurrection is a thing we practice or not. Now, having said that, I have no idea what resurrection is, at least not in the way that we talk about it in our songs and theological pronouncements. Really, I just don't know about all that. But I do know how to practice resurrection, and I know that because Jesus told us explicitly how to do it. He said, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as in heaven." On earth as in heaven. That's pretty clear. To practice resurrection is to bring forth the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. Now, I come from upstate New York, and I don't mean to say that we have created heaven on earth up here. We're as much in the body bag of doubt as you are, wherever you are. And so I'm not talking about utopia. Again, let me use an ordinary personal experience. I'm happy to say that this has happened more than once in my life. But I'm thinking about a recent privilege of being trusted by a colleague who came to see me to talk about a family matter. But honestly, the conversation that ensued was one in which we shared our experiences about work and family and loss. And it was one of those moments that I walked away from it feeling absolutely whole and well and refreshed. Why? Because it was the confluence of my calling and my life and a friendship that felt like a moment of grace. It was a little bit of the kingdom that had arrived on earth as it is in heaven. How do I know that? Experience. I experienced such grace before. God willing, I'll experience it again. But the experience of faith, which I trust and hold on to, it's not science, or because we're not required to measure it or replicate it in the laboratory. It's an experience of faith that says yes in that moment, and it's able to trust it as it recedes into the rearview mirror. While the kingdom on earth, as it is in heaven, is also brought about by justice work and peace work and equity work, it also happens interpersonally and in community. And wherever two or more of God's creatures find currents of their lives intersecting and moving within the love of God, it's where it is. Those are faith experiences. And wherever and whenever we engage them and allow them to happen within and around us, then we're practicing resurrection. And by the way, we need not fear doubt, because doubt is part of faith. It's not the opposite of faith, it's part of faith. Doubt is a tendon within the network of spiritual bone and muscle that empower us to see and feel and to know the experience of faith, the presence of God in our midst. Doubt's perfectly natural, and it's a kind of resistance training that helps us to build spiritual muscle. We doubt ourselves and our experiences all the time. And there's a utility to doubt, because it causes us to pause and take stock of the moment. But then we take a deep breath and we recollect the wisdom of our experience, and then we move on. We need not fear doubt or give it too much power to discomfort us. So that's it. Faith is an experience of the ordinary presence of God in our midst, and doubt is a normal and natural part of that flow. Now, personally, I have no doubt, or very little doubt, that we will get through this tunnel of doubt that we are in and find ourselves in the midst of some kind of renewal on the other end of it. In the meantime, we can keep practicing resurrection daily and build the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you. Peace be with you.